The third season of the Trailer Park Boys took the show from being a relatively culty niche comedy show on a cable network to it being a major talking point amongst Canadians. It had hit that level where more and more regular people were making a point out of watching the show weekly. Furthermore, by this point, the Trailer Park Boys were regularly doing autograph signings and public appearances. There was merchandise starting to show up. And it was without a doubt that the show had finally hit a stride and became the biggest cable show in Canada. We got to see the show kind of evolve throughout the years. Seasons 1 and 2 had a lot of throwing stuff at the wall to see what would work, but by season 3 they had pretty much come up with the dynamic that they wanted to explore for the rest of the series. Season 1 had Julian being the main focus of the show, with Ricky being sort of a supporting character, and then in season 2 that shifted to them heavily focusing on the exploits of both Ricky and Julian. Season 3 would expand upon that. Not only were Ricky and Julian featured main characters of the show, but Bubbles would kind of be upgraded into that part as well. And the character of Jim Leahy went from merely being an adversary who at times could meet them in the middle to being a full-on main antagonist. Season 3 explored a lot of things about both Ricky and Julian, but as well as Bubbles, and the supporting cast continued to grow. Between seasons, there was some differences. Certain characters got more screen time than they did in previous seasons, certain characters got less screen time than they did in previous seasons. The series' lore had been thoroughly developed, but the main thing is that they also found a dynamic for their seasons, and to be completely honest, finding a dynamic is not always a good thing. In the spring of 2004, the fourth season of Trailer Park Boys hit the airwaves, and season 4 is commonly considered to be one of, if not the best seasons in the series. Its main competition, of course, being the 5th season, and while I do like season 4, I also find that them finding a dynamic and a status quo ultimately was what led to the show's eventual decline. Season 3 ended with a sort of topsy-turvy version of how seasons 1 and 2 ended. While the first 2 seasons ended with Ricky and Julian back in jail, season 3 ended with Leahy and Randy in addition to Julian going to jail, and Ricky ends up coming out on top. The first time in which he does not go to jail, and the first time in which a protagonist does that in the show. One could argue them getting arrested but still keeping the money from Freedom 35 in the second season is them coming out on top, but I look at that as more of a break-even ending. And in the interim between the 3rd and 4th seasons, Ricky ended up becoming the trailer park supervisor due to his experience as temporary relief supervisor earlier in the 3rd season. Him and Bubbles essentially replaced Leahy and Randy. But of course, season 4, much like season 3 and then season 2, devotes part of it to returning Ricky and Julian to their life of crime through circumstances. But unlike the 3rd season, we actually do get to see the change happen more gradually instead of them just kind of getting it out of the way in the first 2 episodes. I think the reason they did this is because the whole crime scheme that they were going to set up for the season is kind of set up between seasons off camera, and the reveal comes as sort of a random twist. The most clever way that they alter the dynamic before swiftly returning to it is by having Leahy actually be the one who is in the dumps at the start of the season. Typically we see Ricky coming back from jail, he has nothing, etc., but this time it's Leahy and Randy that have nothing. The season premiere has Leahy, Julian, and Randy being released from jail, and I remember absolutely dying when I first saw the scene of his gut hitting the woman in the face. But Leahy makes it very obvious that he immediately plans on screwing Ricky over.
Just let me say, Ricky's dream world's about to turn into a nightmare. Payback time for 9 months in jail.
Ricky, in the interim between seasons 3 and 4, has been running the trailer park sort of like a zoo, with not as much interference from Barbara for a modicum of reasons. It's to the point that when he gets stoned and forgets Julian is getting out of jail, he makes a mad panic to conceal the state of Julian's trailer and what he's been doing. I would go ahead and say the first episode of season 4 might actually be one of the best premieres the show has ever done. It's basically just Ricky trying to clean up his own mess and Bubbles distracting Julian, and the way Bubbles distracts Julian is by completely getting shit-faced, and it's pretty funny because we don't really ever get to see Bubbles that intoxicated, and it leads to some hilarious moments.
Fuck Randy's gun. It's full of dirty old cheeseburgers.
Hold up for a second.
In the end, Leahy comes up with a scheme to completely screw Ricky over, but it ends up falling flat, and George Green finds no evidence and pretty much chews out Leahy. I really do like this whole, never cry shitwolf thing. It's like George Green is looking at Leahy as such an idiot that he feels the only way he's gonna get the point across to him is to literally go down to his level with a shit analogy. And there's something really mean-spirited and funny about how Julian literally gets gets out of jail, his trailer's destroyed, and he doesn't even get to sleep at home because he gets thrown into the drunk tank on like the first day out of jail. Never Cry Shitwolf does a really good job of reintroducing the viewers to the characters in the world of Trailer Park Boys after the year that it was off the air. It has a lot of really funny moments, it has some good character moments, and while things are a little different, like to me when this premiered, I remember watching it when it did premiere, it felt like I had kind of just like returned somewhere familiar after a long time away. Even though this was shot at a different trailer park than the third season.
Here. Ricky!
The power's still on, Julian.
Ricky, I'm Bubbles.
The power's still on, Julian.
Ricky, I'm Bubbles. Ricky, you don't have a cigarette.
I need a joint.
Episode 2, titled A Man's Gotta Eat, continues on with this reintroduction, and it does go a little bit into the origin story of Randy. So in my Season 1 video, I had mentioned that it kind of seemed like at some point in development, Randy was actually supposed to be Patrick from the movie, but then they quickly dropped that, and Randy was just turned into an original character who was played by the same actor. If I had to headcanon it, I'd say Randy is like Patrick's cousin or something. In Season 2, it's implied that Randy was part of the boys' group when they were younger and was the friend that kind of sold out and ended up taking a job as Leahy's assistant. And there was that dynamic where he was that sort of reasonable authority figure versus Leahy when it came to interacting with the boys. I mean, to a point. And while Season 1 had hinted at this, Season 3 is the one that really adds more to this by making it pretty clear that Leahy and Randy are a couple. Season 4 and the Christmas special, which I'm also going to be covering in this video since I didn't get to do it for Christmas, implies that at some point Randy was a male prostitute that Leahy would visit behind Barbara's back. And in the second episode, A Man's Gotta Eat, we get to see what his prostitution persona was as Randy returns to it. Essentially, he was known as a male prostitute named Smokey who solicited prostitution for cheeseburgers.
Looking for a date? $10 or 6 Dairy Queen coupons.
Although there is some differences in how this is portrayed versus when we get to the Christmas special. Like, he's not Smokey there, he's just kind of like a gay male prostitute Randy. There's a lot of inconsistencies between this season and the Christmas special, but I'll get into that when I get to the Christmas special. Man's Gotta Eat focuses on how all of Ricky's scheming between seasons has negatively affected Julian. Not only did Julian end up in the drunk tank on his first day out of jail because of Ricky and Bubbles, his trailer was completely turned into a grow-op. Ricky took out a bunch of credit cards, loans, and other things in his name, and furthermore used his trailer as a hub for a satellite signal piracy operation, under a satellite plan that Ricky took out in Julian's name. And quite frankly, this might actually be the funniest Donnie Danny scene ever.
For fuck's sake, Ricky, what the fuck are you doing with the satellite? I paid $10 I want my fucking satellite signal!
Danny, chill the fuck out. I'm fucking trying here. I'll be back up in a bit.
Going back into like low-class Canadian stereotypes, like these people, like the lower-class like white Canadian, I'm allowed to say that because I myself am a lower-class white Canadian, just like obsessed with TV and need to have TV. They freak out if anything happens to the cable. My dad lives in kind of a shitty building full of a bunch of white trash, and like the cable went out one day, and my dad described it as being something like Dawn of the Dead. Like all these people who never leave their apartments started just kind of creeping out and like bickering amongst themselves and like freaking out because the cable was out. I guess for a bunch of people that sit around and don't do anything and probably don't have internet, like the idea of being without cable is just like fucking terrifying for them.
There, they're in the fucking van to leave.
$10 a month!
I find Season 4 does a good job of bringing the chaos back to the series. Like, the show did feel pretty chaotic in Seasons 1 and 2, but it was an aspect that they toned down in the third season. Ricky just having a freak out and, like, throwing all the satellites off of his roof and, like, yelling at the fucking satellite people is really funny. It just comes out of nowhere. Like, he just gets frustrated and he's like, fine, take it. And, like, it's so funny.
Oh, Jesus, boys, look out. I know what's coming.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Jesus. Take every fucking one of these down the fucking ground. Is that what you want, you fucking retards?
But really the highlight of this episode, A Man's Gotta Eat, is Julian's breakdown. He finally snaps after realizing how fucked he is. Like, basically, while Julian was in jail, Ricky took out a bunch of credit cards and loans and mortgages in Julian's name, so he's, like, arguably worse off than he was, like, before he went to jail. Which is, like, pretty funny, because Ricky, like, usually he's portrayed as stupid, and, like, Flanderization kicks in later, and he becomes, like, retarded. But it's pretty funny that he was actually smart enough to, like, know how to pretty much full-on identity theft Julian. Shitty as that is pretty, like, that's pretty smart for him. He knew how to get all that shit together. Obviously, he had no idea how negative of an effect this would have on Julian, but the whole ordeal causes Julian to kind of crash out and decide that he's gonna take off and go work on an oil rig, which is a common thing that Canadians do. Saying they're gonna do it, not actually doing it. It's what I like to consider to be a commonly talked about prospect, but often a misguided one. And, you know, there are success stories with it, but those aren't funny. I think if you're from Canada, you'll get this, but if you're not, you know, I'll just tell you a little bit of a story. So let's get into story time here. When I was in high school, I had this friend who was kind of a fuck-up, and he was out of school, he had dropped out, he wasn't working, and essentially his day-to-day life included him sitting in his parents' basement, playing Halo and smoking weed. His parents basically gave him an ultimatum. He either had to get a job, go back to school, or he was getting booted out of the house. And somehow he was able to convince his parents that he had a plan to move out to Alberta to work on an oil rig to make real money. And while I'm kind of like not 100% on this one, I've only heard it like secondhand, apparently his parents were so ecstatic at the prospect of their son going out west to start a life for himself that they supported him all the way and gave him like 10 grand in startup money. Keep in mind, this is like 10 grand in 2007 money. They were like, son, you know, go out there, get a place for yourself, get your oil rig job, and start your life. The problem was this guy had absolutely no awareness of how someone gets a job in the oil industry. It's one of the most gate-kept industries in the world. Essentially, he had the idea that he could ship himself out to Alberta, show up to an oil rig and say, hello, I just moved to Alberta, I'd like a job on your oil rig, please. He didn't realize that you need all sorts of things to actually get the job, like stuff like WMIS and first aid, which is usually something that could be trained on the job, but then you also needed your high school diploma, and he was a dropout. You needed your driver's license, and you needed some form of experience in labor to even get an entry-level job in the oil industry. Also throwing in, you needed physical fitness, and this is a guy I saw get gassed out throwing a single punch in a fight. A man who smoked a half quarter of weed and a pack of cigarettes a day. And then there's all sorts of other like permits and training courses you need to even consider working in the oil industry. Nevertheless, it's safe to say he did not get his oil rig job. He ended up working at a McDonald's, bleeding the $10,000 startup money his parents gave him, and within less than a year he was back in Toronto. Now with very disappointed parents who were probably never going to give him another opportunity like that again. The point of that little story is to explain that many Canadians think that they can just go out west and work in the oil industry to solve all their problems, when in fact it's not that easy. Narrative-wise, it's always a good indicator when Julian is in the dumps that he runs out of rum, so he's got nothing. That's how you know, like, he's fucked. And Julian cannot function without his rum, so he starts drinking this stuff called Swish and getting completely fucked up on it. Bubbles does do an okay job describing what Swish is to the audience.
Julian,
Come in
don't...
my trailer and smoke a joint.
Don't start drinking Swish, please. Swish is this old, dirty, shitty-tasting, homemade fucking liquor that you can barely get her into you, but... my fuck, does it ever get you some drunk?
But in essence, Swish is a drink made by gathering old whiskey or rum barrels and filling them with water, which causes the liquor that has soaked into the wood over time to become extracted into the water. Apparently it's disgusting, and it can cause blindness if there's a high methanol level, but as Bubbles said, it gets you some fucking drunk. But the issue here is Julian is drinking Swish, which is, it gets him hammered. He's completely wasted, and instead of going out on his little adventure, he ends up drunk behind King of Donair. Not sure if I went over what King of Donair is. I think I may have touched upon it in the previous videos, but King of Donair is like a local kind of fast casual pizza and donair chain in Nova Scotia. It actually started to get a lot more appearances in Trailer Park Boys to the point where it's actually one of the only like brand name things I remember them showing in this show where they didn't like blur out the logo. So yeah, Julian is shit-faced behind King of Donair, and he picked up Randy on his way over there, who is now under his Smokey persona again and prostituting himself out for cheeseburgers.
Smokey. That was the name he used to call himself when he was on the streets back when I was on the force.
Strip the chrome off a trailer hitch.
In a rare occurrence, we actually, for the first time, get closure on something from a previous season. We actually have the return of a character who was featured in the last season to get kind of one last scene, which is something we didn't get for Candy or Levi in season 1, and it's something we didn't get for Trina after season 2. However, we do get some closure on the Erica character who was very prominently featured in the back half of season 3 as Julian's love interest. In an odd coincidence, she just happens to be working undercover Vice at the same location and almost arrests Randy, and when she sees how fucked up Julian is, she actually feels so bad she doesn't even bother arresting either of them.
Julian? Drunk and pissing on a dumpster behind the King of Donaire? Don't you know me?
Brenda.
Erica.
Erica.
In a way, it's kind of a sad moment because she was important enough to Julian in the last season that he jeopardized Ricky's spot on the cruise for her, and at this point he's so fucked up and down in the dumps he doesn't even remember her name. And then there's also this funny little interaction with Bubbles, Ricky, and Erica.
Stop staring at my tits, Bubbles.
I wasn't.
Yes, you were.
I was not.
And this is something that always killed me. I love these little, like, character bits they would add to the show. Like, Julian's all fucked up on Swish, but right away, Bubbles starts putting rum into him and he actually starts sobering up. Also, I never noticed, like, I'm not sure if they were trying to imply something here, because Bubbles is obviously a cat person, but he's, like, really mean to that dog.
A kiss. A kiss.
Julian,
Oh, Julian,
what are you doing, Julian?
I'm dancing.
Put him down. Put him down. Go on, get you miserable bastard.
But in all honesty, the image of Julian being so fucked up that he's like eating pizza crusts and dancing with a dirty old dog is like such a rare thing to see for the Julian character, because he's usually like a functioning alcoholic. He has his drink, but he never gets like drunk. And it's a nice change of pace to see Julian get fucked up instead of Ricky. They recover Julian, they get him all sobered up, and at this point Julian wants a full disclosure on what has been going on in the park, like what Ricky has been up to, thinking he's doing another grow-up similar to what they did in season 2, but it is revealed that in between seasons 3 and 4, Ricky somehow managed to cultivate an insanely large grow field, like potential felony or whatever the Canadian equivalent levels are of weed. This pretty much sets up the goal for the entire season, and that goal is to take advantage of the fact that Barbara Leahy is having financial troubles and attempting to buy the park. Now, this is where some of my issues with the show's direction and ultimate fate of where it went starts to kind of rise to the surface here. I remember the reveal of the big wheat field kind of being like a holy shit moment for this show, and that's because at the time, giant grow-ops were somewhat of a hot topic. Weed had been more or less decriminalized in Canada for quite some time. It wasn't really worth arresting anybody for. Like, sure, if you were selling large amounts, they'd go after you, but more often than not, like, even if you were selling weed, you wouldn't really face any serious jail time for possession of just, like, weed. Likely, you might get a short run in minimum and a fine or something, and it was more so the tax aspect of selling weed that the law was going after rather than actually selling an illicit substance. Like, the whole reason the Canadian government legalized weed wasn't to take a bite out of crime, because weed is such a small part of organized crime. It was essentially to just, like, kind of take away a source of tax-free income from, like, the lower and working class, as well as to legally sell it so that they can tax it and make a lot of money off of it. However, at the time, the one thing the cops did go after was grow operations. Like, you could get into serious shit for having a grow operation. Like, a small hydro operation or a few plants wasn't that bad, but if you had, like, an industrial grow op going, you could pretty much get fucking slapped with a pretty hefty sentence if, you know, under the wrong circumstances. So this was probably the most major crime that the Trailer Park Boys had committed besides the public shootout from the end of the first movie. I remember this was like a wham moment for the show. Like, people were like, holy shit, that's a big field of weed. Now, my main issue with this plot point is it was at this moment Trailer Park Boys went from being sort of an independent, culty alternative comedy show and kind of fell into the stoner slop territory. This is when the show started to become heavily ingrained in weed culture. And now one could argue that the weed aspect had been in the show since the beginning, at least since the first season, because season 1 does have Ricky attempting to grow weed in his car. The thing is, that whole thing isn't the main plot point of the season, and it exists purely purely as like a one-off joke to paint Ricky as a fucking loser with no job skills or prospects. They talk about his weed operation, but in that season he never really gets it going because it shifts to the whole thing with him marrying Lucy. And you're supposed to laugh at him and think he's a loser because he's reduced to trying to grow and sell weed out of the car he's living in. Season 2 is the first season that features weed as like kind of a focal point of a scheme, but again, they weren't really diving too much into the weed porn shit. Sure, they do have some shots that linger on the plants, and we get to see the Airstream trailer where they're doing their hydro operation, but for the most part, the grow-op was just like kind of like a background thing they were doing while still developing the show. Like, it didn't quite attract like all the burnout stoner losers. And I'm sure like the shots of the weed, like for the stoners who were watching, like they probably completely gooed their jockeys over it. Oh, fuck man, like look at the weed on the screen, bro. Like, look, it's weed. There's so much weed. Like, fuck man, like if I had that much weed, like I'd be smoking weed. Like, every time, oh man, like there's so much fucking weed in this show. Like, oh fuck. Oh, there's weed. Oh fuck. I'm gonna. Holy fuck, I'm gonna. Also, yes, for all you weed culture people, like, people who don't smoke weed or, like, only smoke it occasionally and, like, have to deal with you, like, going on about weed all the time, that's pretty much how we perceive you. Smoking weed is not a personality trait. But, like, the focal point of the show was still character development, absurd comedic situations, and seeing if the characters were going to succeed in their schemes. And, at times, relationships changed, characters grew. We were given some sort of insight beyond character sells weed. Season 3 kind of had the right idea. They took it away from the whole big pending scheme that was present in Season 2 and put in sort of a scheme of the week format. That's not, like, sustainable, but the minor crimes plot did make it interesting because every episode featured some sort of different money-making scheme. And within those, it still left room for character development and an arc that was contingent on personal growth and relationships between characters. Sure, there were scenes of Ricky getting drunk or stoned and weed was brought up, but it was more so a background event or a minor plot point rather than the entire backbone of the show's format. I think what happened was, like, they started putting weed as more of a plot point because that's like, I guess that's like a safe drug to show the characters selling to not kind of push them into evil. But the problem was that attracted the stoner fan base, which caused the producers and the writers to play towards that fan base. At its core, while Trailer Park Boys did have some smart comedy moments, it is in general a very lowbrow comedy. Like, among the smart jokes here and interesting little tropes there and the character moments there, like, it was a lowbrow humor show that got it to be as popular as it was. Like, the lowbrow shit was what attracted the wider audience. And as a result, there's nothing more lowbrow than a stoner viewer base. So they got attracted to the show for the weed, and then obviously because, like, as people started to kind of move on from the show, the stoners stayed with it. And so they started playing more and more into the weed culture thing. And so this season and the 5th season are the peak of the show in terms of viewership. Like, it also does mark the inevitability of a decline, and that decline lines up with them focusing purely on weed humor. It feels like the addition of weed is like a bigger plot point is what dumbed down the show to this level. And I do apologize if you, like, some of my viewers here are those like hardcore pot culture stoner people who have to watch something with people smoking weed to enjoy it. Like, you do you, but basically they reduced the show to a long drawn out pot joke. And I feel that it kind of shits all over the hard work they did to get this premise noticed without relying on weed stuff. And essentially why I'm going into this tangent is because this scene is what started the long pot joke. It's why every season subsequently focused on something to do with weed. It's why they did so many weed porn scenes. It's why it's like they really started playing up the pot shit, and I think it took away from the show's overall premise, and all the humor kind of just started to kind of get rolled up into weed humor. So the big scheme for season 4 is that the boys are now going to harvest this large weed field en masse to get a huge payoff in order to buy out the trailer park and live like kings. That's like the looming plot point in this season. But it kind of hangs in the background while they just do a few hang-around episodes. Now, the 3rd episode in season 4, Rub and Tiz'zug, is what I consider to be the certified dud of season 4. I use that term kind of lightly because yes, this episode is still funny, it's just very forgettable outside of a few noteworthy moments. Like the beating that Julian receives at the beginning when Ricky and Bubbles think he's a Sasquatch is pretty funny. And this episode marks not only the return of Cyrus, who was notably absent from season 3, but it does have the premiere, debut, whatever you want to call it, of Phil Philadelphia Collins. A character who was a minor one-off character for season 4, but quickly becomes a more prominent character in later seasons.
You looking at my gut?
No.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I just took a little peek.
I saw you.
So
What are you looking at my gut for?
Oh.
I'm just fucking with you. What can I do with you?
And I do like the little callback they did to the pilot with Randy beating up Cyrus.
Damn it, kiss my hand and say I'm a little bitch.
You're a little bitch.
Say it like you mean it, Cyrus.
I'm a little bitch.
All right, that's enough. You beat him.
Season 4 is where the abuse of Corey and Trevor starts to really get to a point of flanderization. I would say it's probably the first thing they really flanderized in the show besides maybe Bubbles. Like, Julian being the straight man and his penchant for rum and coke does sometimes get played up to ridiculous levels, but that's funny. Leahy getting comically drunk later on and Ricky getting stupider and stupider, those are acceptable to a degree. It does get to a point where it's ridiculous, but that doesn't happen here. Corey and Trevor basically turn into complete and utter butt monkeys. They went from just being like kind of punk kids who wanted to be friends with Ricky and Julian but talk shit behind their back to just being like these lackeys for them that desperately seek approval despite being completely abused by them. For example, in this episode, Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles decide to open up some rub parlors in their trailers and successfully convince Corey and Trevor to start jerking off dudes.
Get your hands off it! I paid for a lady, not fucking Corey and Trevor!
Like, it's pretty funny, but like, I don't blame the two actors for leaving the show for its final season. But again, we'll get to that when we get to that. Episode 4, The Green Bastard, is an episode that I don't want to say is the most popular episode of the season. I think now it actually might have, like, become that in comparison to what was the most popular back when this aired, which I'm going to get to after this. But a lot of people I know who got into the show later, like, always quote The Green Bastard episode, and it is a pretty good episode, but not for the reasons that, you know, many people credit it for. Sure, Bubbles running around in his Green Bastard persona is, like, haha funny, but, like, the performance that absolutely steals the fucking show is Bernie the Right Hook Sanford, the president of the International Association of Trailer Park Supervisors, and Assistant Trailer Park Supervisors, is so good. Essentially, Barb has him over because Leahy gets nominated for an award, and Barb is hopeful that she can save the park by having it join the association. And this leads to a whole kind of sitcom-y thing where they frame it as if Ricky is crazy and pretending to be the trailer park supervisor when he actually is the supervisor. And on that same day, Ricky does like a community day thing where they build a wrestling ring, and Bubbles gets to dress up as his wrestling persona, the Green Bastard. The Green Bastard is memorable, like people bring it up, especially people who got into the show later, and the Green Bastard did regrettably appear in AEW like years after the show was popular, which is kind of fucked up because of what Bubbles got accused of like shortly after that appearance, but that's another video. The Bernie Sanford character is so fucking memorable despite only ever appearing in this episode. He is just hilarious like every time he's on the screen. He's so obnoxious and braggadocious, but it's in the best way possible.
I've had guys throw barbecues at me. They've broke the windows out of my car. They've cursed and sworn at me. But the bottom line is, I ain't shook. 'Cause if the right hook comes out, crazy motherfuckers like you get knocked out.
He ends up at odds with Ricky naturally, and in the end, Ricky and the Green Bastard team up in a wrestling match to face Randy and Leahy, with the winner being crowned Trailer Park Supervisor. And of course, in true wrestling fashion, there's shenanigans, and Bubbles and Ricky get screwed Dusty Rhodes style, and Leahy ends up becoming the Trailer Park Supervisor again. It's an interesting way to kind of return it to the status quo. They're just like, fuck it, Ricky and Bubbles lose a wrestling match, and that's how we get them out of that Trailer Park Supervisor framing. And this is also the first time Ricky gets called Ravine in, I think, 2 seasons? I think they do it in season 2. They don't really do it in season 3, but Bernie Sanford refers to Ricky as Ravine, and that causes him to just kind of go off the rails. Well, really, like, Ricky was about to do something crazy, and then Bernie calls Julian an alcoholic, and that gives Julian the incentive to give Ricky permission to do whatever he wants. Now, the name of the actor who played Bernie Sanford has never been revealed. Like, people have gone into it, people have tried to investigate it. He gets wrongfully credited in this episode as another actor, but this dude was fucking great. Like, Bernie Sanford, like, I really wish they would have brought him back as a somewhat regular character. I don't know where they got this actor, but he is just fucking tremendous. And now this is kind of one for if any of my viewers are from the Atlantic, I do need a little bit of help here, because my dad always had this theory about the Bernie Sanford character, and I've seen this theory kind of floating around the internet. In this episode, he says,
"Don't be looking me in the eyes, boy. I ain't got no candy for you. No candy.
Which is a line that in a previous season is used by J-Rock. I don't know if that's just like a regional kind of Halifax, New Brunswick, Dartmouth, whatever saying. Like, I've never been to the Atlantic. I've only known a handful of people from the Atlantic. But myself and the various other people on the internet and my dad took this to be like a very subtle hint that Bernie Sanford might actually be J-Rock's biological father. And it's interesting to note that in the events of the previous episode, J-Rock got arrested, so he's not around here, so he completely missed the boat on interacting with this character, who may very well be his biological father. But it's kind of on that list of like Trailer Park Boys mysteries. It's like, what happened to Patrick after the first movie? Or is Julian Trinity's real father? Or was Ricky's mom a crackhead? Is Bernie Sanford J-Rock's father? Remember, J-Rock's mom said that she liked black guys, so maybe she wasn't just saying it as a word of encouragement. It's safe to say that Bernie Sanford possibly gave J-Rock's mom the right hook. Now we get to the 5th episode, which is titled Conkey, and this is the one that, like, this is considered not only to be the best episode of season 4, but it's in, like, the top 5 of all-time Trailer Park Boys episodes. On IMDb, it's in 3rd place behind one of the newer episodes, which did, like, an animation style, and then Closer to the Heart. Of course, since I don't factor in the Netflix seasons, this would technically make it the 2nd highest rated original run episode in the series. This is, like, the marquee episode of season 4. This is the one that I remember kids talking about when I was in school. This is the one that I remember, like, whenever it was on TV in a rerun, I would just be like, okay, I'm watching the Conkey episode. But in its own way, like, this could really be considered the shark jump moment for the show. Despite the fact that they try to do an episode later on that is supposed to purposely be a shark jump, but no, this is pretty shark jumpy. Like, there's a couple different ways you can look at the shark jump. Like, the shark jump is definitely, like, when you take a show and kind of break the rules of its reality. Trailer Park Boys itself, in its first 3 seasons, was mostly rooted in reality. They were trying to pass it off as semi-realistic. Specifically seasons 1 and most of 2. It's like, you're watching it, but like I said, there's people who actually thought that seasons 1 and 2 were like legitimate a documentary. Season 3 kind of bent that a little bit. The situations got a little more ridiculous. It was a little more like, okay, this is definitely fiction. But like season 4 with like the Green Bastard and Conkey, and then the episode after Conkey, which I'll get to next, it's like they're really pushing the boundaries of realism here. I like to think of the shark jump as less of like an instantaneous like destruction of credibility and more so an indicator that a show is like inevitably hurling towards a decline. There are plenty of shows that jumped the shark and still like remained watchable, but it kind of shows it's like, okay, they were taking it in a direction. Said direction clearly does indicate that creativity is kind of running low and they have to get a little bit more wild with it. And that's also like, shark jumps can include fucking flanderization too. I'm gonna do a whole video on like the shark jump and what I think it means and what people commonly think it means at some point, but I do think Conkey is really like the shark jump moment for Trailer Park Boys, but it was of the gradual slow burn type, like, because like I said, the show still remained watchable and funny and with viewers for a couple more seasons. The whole story with Conkey is that Bubbles gets a severe tooth infection and refuses to go to the dentist or the hospital to get it dealt with, so Julian hatches a plan to get Bubbles' ventriloquist dummy named Conkey to help him cope with it.
Fuck, I found him, Julian!
Little fuckface.
And the whole thing is kind of played like a psychological horror movie. Apparently Conkey was an outlet for Bubbles' more repressed personality traits, and as such, he says things through Conkey that he wouldn't otherwise say. But the problem is, this tooth infection's really bad, and Julian is like, this is the only way we're gonna get him to do this is by bringing back Conkey. In the past, it had led to Ricky throwing Conkey into a river outside of the park. So they bring Conkey back, they give him to Bubbles to get him to go to the doctor for his tooth, and it really is up in the air in this episode what exactly Conkey is.
Get in, Julian.
Ricky!
Personally, I think it's repressed aspects of Bubbles' personality that's given an outlet, but many other people point towards the theory that Conkey itself is a whole other entity. You can toss that one on the mystery pile.
Conkey, you better fuck off, I'm telling you.
Fuck off. You just remember I call the shots here, Bubbles. You got it?
Yes, Conkey.
And there's a B-plot as well to Conkey. It basically involves Leahy trying to deal with Bubbles' cat problem because, Bubbles' been dealing with the tooth infection. He hasn't been able to really take care of his cat, so they're running amok in the park.
Those two shit rats just pissed on $40 worth of eclairs at the bake sale, and Stinkster and Daisy were doing it in front of the kids.
Oh my god.
I think the real highlight of the Conkey episode and why it is one of the best episodes in the entire series is the fact that the boys have to tolerate Conkey, and Conkey is just saying these fucking mean things that Bubbles would never say to Ricky or Julian, and it just makes for some hilarious shit because Ricky has outbursts and Julian has to kind of rein him in. This is all made worse by the fact that Ricky has a glue rag stuck to his face from an earlier incident resulting in a broken nose. This episode is just purely entertaining, even if it does kind of break the rules a little bit. It's pretty much just the best display of what the character dynamic is between the three main characters. Julian's the voice of reason, Ricky is the explosive one, and Bubbles is kind of just the wild card. Bubbles is being Bubbles, but he's also being Conkey, and he's not taking responsibility for Conkey's outburst because, well,
I can't deal with you. You know that? I can't fucking deal with you.
Bubbles, stop with the Conkey stuff.
Julian, I can't be responsible for every little thing that comes out of his mouth,
That's where it kind of leans on Conkey being its own entity, but I still think it's just Bubbles' repressed personality coming out. And of course, there's the whole classic Ricky tripping out on glue hallucinations, which actually time capsules this season really well because there's a reference to somebody in Canadian culture whose relevance ran out probably just after this finished shooting.
Bubbles, you got the wrong idea. Let him go.
What the fuck?
Julian, it must be the fumes. I'm hallucinating, man. It looks like Bubbles got wings on his back and he's strangling Mike Bullard.
For those who don't know, Mike Bullard was this god-awful Canadian talk show host. It's a video I've had in the works for a while. I just haven't really, figured out how to execute it, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But he was this Canadian talk show host that was popular for a while, had a pretty big blowout with one network, ended up going to another network, and then ended up, ruining his career. He was popular until he wasn't. So, this reference when this was shot was probably oh yeah, people will get this, but then, literally this episode aired maybe 2-3 months after his show was thrown off and he was pretty much blacklisted from the TV industry. And it's to a point where my generation doesn't remember Mike Bullard as the talk show host. They remember him as being the guy Ricky sees when he's tripping on glue. And now he's dead. Fuck you. Justice for Cynthia Mulligan. The climax of the Conkey episode has Bubbles going berserk on Leahy, thinking Leahy's gonna have his cats euthanized at Sam Losco's vet, which leads to a whole chaotic situation with tranquilizer darts, gunshots, purple squirrels, and then a kind of cunning plan in which Ricky and Julian frame up Leahy and Randy like they just showed up to the veterinarian's office drunk, passed out, and pissed themselves. And then of course it ends with Conkey getting shot because he starts taking it way too far with Ricky and Julian, calling Ricky Ravine.
Did you just call me an idiot, Conkey? Huh?
Maybe I did. Ravine.
Alright. Ravine is taking a little too far, alright? You little fucker.
He's the fucking man they
Don't say it, Bubbles.
Ravine.
Calling Julian Patrick Swayze, and then bang. Which the last episode had a return of the Ravine comments. This is the first time that Julian gets called Patrick Swayze, I think since the 1999 movie.
What excellent negotiation tactics you used. Patrick Swayze.
That's not funny, Bubbles.
Oh, my Julian. My handsome Julian Patrick Swayze, you were so fucking sexy in Roadhouse, fucking Dirty Dancing.
Which is a major trigger for him, and they explain that, of course, later in the series. Conkey is probably the closest thing they ever had to, a Halloween episode. It's not really Halloween themed, but it is horror themed. And to add to that, when they bury Conkey back in the river, they have, the horror stinger kind of play, is he really dead? The Conkey character became such a popular element of the show because of this episode that despite only really ever making one appearance until near the last season, he was a character that was heavily associated to the show, to the point that when the Trailer Park Boys Christmas special was released on DVD, it had an exclusive Conkey finger puppet that came with it. The episode itself is truly one of the most entertaining episodes in the season, and it stands tall amongst an entire season as a highlight. Even if it is a little bit shark jumpy in its execution, it's still unique, funny, and clever. Also, what the fuck was with the dancing Asian guy?
Oh, round up the cats? You were gonna have my cats killed?
What are you talking about? Leahy's getting your cat spayed, not put to sleep.
You should know we wouldn't do that, Bubbles.
Give him a break.
Oh my God, boys, what have we done to Leahy and Randy?
Fuck him.
I think like midway through the season is kind of where I start to get a little bit fatigued with this season because we get like 3 Bubbles episodes in a row. The premiere is clearly a Ricky and Julian episode, the second episode is totally a Julian episode, the third episode is like all 3 of them. But then we get Green Bastard, Conkey, and If You Love Something, Set It Free or whatever. That was like 3 Bubbles episodes in a row, and after that, there's only 2 episodes left of the season. And while all the characters are prominently featured, like, these 3 episodes are no doubt Bubbles episodes. And this is an episode that a lot of viewers talked about. I think it's okay, like, basically the boys find a mountain lion eating their weed crop, and Bubbles adopts it and rehabilitates it. There are some really funny scenes. I like when Randy is making burgers, and the lion eats all of them, and tries to tell Mr. Leahy that, like, a tiger ate all the burgers, and he doesn't buy it.
I ate 7 cheeseburgers. Randy, you set up this elaborate charade to cover eating 7 cheeseburgers? You ate 7 cheeseburgers? Randy, you promised me this would never happen
Mr.
again.
Leahy, I'm not lying about this. It was a great big tiger thing, and it put its teeth right through the mustard and ate all the burgers.
But really, besides the sort of sentimental, emotional stuff with Bubbles having to release the mountain lion, which he named Steve French, the most memorable part of this is when the mountain lion, well, there's no delicate way to put this, has its way with Trevor.
What are you doing?
This is actually something they set up in earlier episodes, like in Conkey when Trevor is helping round up Bubbles' cats.
This is hard, Mr. Lee. They're scratching the shit out of us.
The cat's in heat, Trevor, and you're wearing a leopard print coat? Smart.
What happens is Steve French is running amok, causing problems in the park, and then he eats a bunch of Viagra burgers and chases down Trevor and fucks him. While this does completely degrade Corey and Trevor into being the butt monkey characters of the show, I will say Trevor's reaction is, like, darkly funny. And yes, I understand that this could be a trigger to any victims. I don't think rape is funny, but I do think that an animal attacking someone is kind of funny.
Trevor, what the fuck's going on here?
I don't want to talk about it.
Jesus.
Leave me alone.
What does he have no pants on?
This is one of those episodes that was clearly made with the general audiences in mind. Like, besides the mountain lion raping Trevor, it's very sitcom-y and it has, like, a sappy ending.
Do the right thing, buddy.
Oh, no. Thanks, boys. Are you guys crying?
No, we're not fucking crying.
One of the plot points that makes itself apparent throughout the season is Ricky is engaged in a sexual relationship with Barb Leahy. Like, we get little hints here and there, but, like, it's kind of just, like, a looming plot point. And, like, this whole thing is kind of weird, because it does kind of take a prominent stance in this season, but much like his relationship with Sarah in the second season, it barely ever gets acknowledged again after this season. And we get to see this kind of play out in the 2-part finale. The 2-part finale consists of 2 episodes, Propane, and Working Man, which settles out the grow-up storyline. Essentially, DVS, who was in the previous season and has now become a regular character, has set the boys up to sell the weed to Snoop Dogg. It being revealed that J-Rock was actually just under house arrest the entire time in the previous episode. So essentially, the boys have to harvest all of their weed because one of their fields, and honestly I don't remember them establishing more than one field, but anyway, one of their fields gets destroyed by the cops. So they need to harvest it and sell it, and there's a sense of urgency. Furthermore, Leahy hatches a scheme to marry Barb in order to secure his place in the park, basically relegating Randy back to being a side piece.
So what I'm asking is, will you marry me?
Hold on a minute here, Barbara. Did you just ask me if I want to get married by you?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm flattering that you'd ask me stuff. I mean, it's been great banging and hanging out. And part of the stuff about me that you don't know or you wouldn't understand. Like, I'm fucked.
No, you're not. You're not fucked. Listen, you can grow your dope and get drunk and listen to Helix and play video games and not clean up as much as you want.
That's cool with you?
Yeah, so what do you say?
Fuck. Now, the Barb and Ricky shit is, like, kind of weird and uncomfortable because, yes, they are both consenting adults, but Barb acting like a glorified babysitter/motherly figure with Ricky is just, like, really odd. I think it's because Ricky is not an emotionally mature person and he's being manipulated by an older woman. Like, again, consenting adults, there's nothing wrong going on here, but it is off-putting. And I get that it's supposed to be funny, and it is kind of funny, but it is low-key a little bit cringe at the same time. Barb actually full-on proposes marriage to Ricky, and Ricky just goes along with it because basically he doesn't have to change or do anything. And to be completely honest, like, I guess if a somewhat attractive older woman was bringing me lunches and cigarettes, like, I'd probably take that. Oh, don't act like you wouldn't fucking do it either. It's just like a weird plot point though, because it just like never really gets brought up again. It feels like it was an ass pull they did for humor while developing the season, and then it's just like, well, it's done, it's over, they dropped it, but it's very prevalent here. The real highlight of Propane is Jim Leahy's complete fucking breakdown. This is the season that really plays up the drunk bastard aspect of Leahy, and it kind of falls into Flanderization, but it's kind of like the good Flanderization, because John Dunsworth was really good at playing drunk.
Jim, look, you better mix a drink or get the one you left outside, okay?
Leahy's alcoholism was first shown in season 2, although it only was kind of there for a couple of episodes, and it was definitely really downplayed. It gets played up near the end of season 3, but like season 4 is where the character of Jim Leahy transforms into the breakout character he became during the show's back half. This is one instance, as I said, where Flanderizing an aspect of a character actually did benefit the character. John Dunsworth was always funny as an antagonist as Leahy, but making him this barely functioning alcoholic does lead to some of the funniest moments in the show's history. As I mentioned, we saw it in season 2 with Jim Leahy's a drunk bastard, we saw it again in season 3 with the delusions of Officer Jim Leahy. His drunkenness was more so portrayed as something that happens when he goes over the deep end, but season 4 has him maintain his sobriety mostly, but it does really play up the drunkenness in a few episodes. And this is something that would become like a defining trait of the character. We first really see this version of Leahy in episode 2, A Man's Gotta Eat, where he hunts down a Blue Jay burger for Randy, but the final episode, Propane, and Working Man really do show like this is the direction that Jim Leahy is going to be going in from this point forward. And it all starts with his complete mental breakdown as he is told that his ex-wife is now marrying his mortal enemy, Ricky. He's basically left with nothing because after being told that he's going to be relegated back to a side piece, Randy decides to just go back to being a male prostitute. And this is where Leahy goes on the warpath attempting to kill Ricky. The Propane dance is another one of those like quotable Trailer Park Boys moments. Like for a while, every time Propane was brought up, like you just had to say Propane.
Propane. Time to start the game. Propane.
Leahy, you're peeing yourself.
Propane.
Here you go, Jim. Propane. There you go.
Propane.
Propane. Julian, what in the fuck was he on?
Like, it needed to be done. It still needs to be done. Like, sometimes I just say it. Anytime propane is mentioned, it's either a King of the Hill reference or me saying propane. Like, him dancing around all drunk with, like, the broken cigarette trying to light it. Like, it's fucking great. And to date, at least based on the first 7 seasons, Propane is the only Trailer Park Boys episode to end on a to be continued, with Ricky getting blown up in the bathroom. I remember, like, this is when, like, this is probably the most invested I'd ever been in Trailer Park Boys, like, during its original airing, where I was watching week to week. Like, I got to a point where I was watching this over what was airing on Fox at the time, but, like, I remember being like, oh shit, what's gonna happen now? The to be continued, like, a to be continued used to be a big fucking deal. I mean, now it doesn't matter because shows are all released at once, but back in the day, like, having to wait till the next week, it kept you on your seat. You're like, well, how the fuck are they playing this? Of course, it gets kind of tossed away in the finale, which is Working Man, and I consider Working Man to be, like, the weakest episode besides Rub and Tiz'zug. It's basically just a continuation of Propane, where the boys have to harvest the weed, and they hit a bump in the road when the truck that Bubbles is driving collides with Corey and Trevor. And this is a callback to a scene in the previous episode where Ricky's trying to get Bubbles to get his rig license by bribing an instructor, and the instructor just outright refuses due to Bubbles' poor eyesight.
But you can't see jack shit. Jack shit.
Yeah, you put us in a pretty shitty situation here. Like, give me back that piece of hash then. This is fucked.
Can't give you back the dope. I can't give him a license. It's just not safe.
What?
How many fingers, son?
Aww.
You can't see jack shit.
All of them.
How many fingers, son?
Well, I can tell you something else that Bubbles has poor control over. I find the Rita McNeil cameo is a little bit weird. Like, basically, they take her tour bus hostage at gunpoint and make them harvest the weed. Like, I didn't really know who Rita McNeil was. I really don't think I know who she is now. She's like a musician of some sort. If I had to guess, she was either a fan of the show or they needed a celebrity appearance in the show and she was available. It's when the show kind of plays a little too much into the Canadian thing. But nevertheless, the climax of the episode, and by proxy the season, has Leahy holding Ricky hostage at gunpoint with a suicide vest. And the only thing that saves the day is that Julian manages to convince Randy to talk Leahy down, while Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles all end up in jail, this being the first time Bubbles ends up in jail at the end of a season.
You try to prosecute this, you're gonna look like a fucking idiot. You know who's going to jail, George? You guys are, not me. I'm not going to fucking jail. You are. Apparently they got this stupid rule that because I'm on probation I can't carry any dope on me, which is bullshit.
Leahy also ends up at a nut house, but much like season 2, they manage to sell the weed no problem and the plan goes off without a hitch. Well, not exactly.
So I just can't believe everything went so smooth with Corey and Trevor. I mean, we tracked the waybill number and everything went off perfectly. I mean, we're getting out of here and we're buying the park.
Car paid for, cash. Trailer paid for, cash. For years, Ricky and Julian been fucking with us, man. They're always hard on Trevor. So you know what? It feels damn good. We jacked their money, and now I have no time or candy for them bitches, man, because they play themselves. Those guys wanted to buy the trailer park? Well, fuck them. We bought the trailer park. Now we're players, and we're cool.
During the closing scenes of Season 4's finale, we see Corey and Trevor with a new car, a new trailer, Sarah and Lucy, and they have an attitude. They are straight up saying they took the money and bought the trailer park for themselves under Julian and Ricky's noses while they were in jail, which leaves the series on a cliffhanger in which there are heavy implications that Corey and Trevor are going to be the main antagonists of Season 5. Don't get too attached to that idea. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it now because that's like a Season 5 discussion, but let's just say they low-key retcon this. And them retconning this is an action that would eventually lead to certain decisions being made by the actors who play Corey and Trevor. The 4th season of Trailer Park Boys marks the show reaching its true peak. Peak of viewership, peak of critical reception, just peak of everything. When I was younger, this used to be my favorite season, and while I do find myself gravitating more towards the early seasons, it is still a pretty solid season of the show. And its popularity would hold fast throughout the next season, the 5th season, where it was truly a must-see TV show. By this point, everyone and their fucking mother was watching this show. I think it truly does have some of the best episodes in the series. Like, it certainly has some of my favorite episodes. It has my favorite premiere episode, and it is a really funny season, though it does up the ante a little bit too much. And in upping the ante, it does push the limits of how believable the false reality of Trailer Park Boys is. It goes off the rails and jumps the shark a little bit, but it does maintain its humor enough that you can forgive it, because yes, it's stupid, but it's also a comedy. This is the season where they figured out what they were going for, and while the stoner shit was kind of lame and I feel it dampened the series moving forward, it did present some really funny moments overall. It does have its flaws despite being a really funny season. Like, every season has flaws. Seasons 2 and 3, like especially 3, felt way more Ricky-centric, Ricky having been moved into the co-lead position with Julian after the first season. But season 4 obviously takes note of how popular Bubbles became with viewers, and I really don't like Bubbles that much. Like, he has a few laughs here and there, but in all honesty, like, the character of Bubbles is kind of like a Steve Urkel character. Of course, not nearly as popular as Steve Urkel because he never successfully took over the whole show, but you could tell that's what they were trying to go for because Bubbles connected with the audience, which is why he got so much more screen time in season 4 compared to seasons 2 and 1. Even in 3, his screen time started to go up, but he's not a strong enough character, in my opinion, to be on that level. He should have been more kind of like supporting. At this point, the cast was the cast. Like, there were no notable absences where somebody was completely gone from the season. Like, Trinity is in this season, but she's not in it very much. She's rarely on screen for an extended period of time, and she's credited in every episode, but does not appear often. Considering they were able to center the 3rd season mostly around the relationship of Ricky and Trinity, it's okay to give her a break because, like, that kid was a child and probably had to, like, go to school and obey child labor laws and shit. But it is noticeable that she's featured so prominently in season 3 and is kind of just a background character in season 4. In terms of characters getting more development in this season, like, the most development goes to Randy, Leahy, and Bubbles, with Barb being featured more and more and us getting to learn more about her character. And as I mentioned, Corey and Trevor do have kind of an arc within this series, and they also end up in a relationship with Sarah, who tries to help them become more assertive and less like doormats for Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles, with the implication that she's been banging them and they're gonna get married and that she might have tilted Corey and Trevor towards screwing the boys over. But again, this doesn't matter because this gets retconned. Season 4 takes a lot of the right steps, but it's kind of like a 2 steps forward, 1 step backward thing, because while it is funny and it does get creative, they also started to kind of play a little too much into things that would plague the show's reputation and alter what the fan base was. Nevertheless, it's still one of the most consistently good seasons in the series. It's certainly definitely one of the best ones, like pound for pound in terms of the humor, and while the plots are a little less creative than season 3, yet they also kind of make them a little more ridiculous, the writers still had some gas in the tank when they did this season. It delivers some of the show's most iconic moments, and it solidifies Leahy as the next breakout character for the next 3 seasons. It's a solid season, but I find in finding itself even more, it does kind of put the show at risk for full-on Flanderization, as characters would end up being known for one specific trait that would end up being overutilized and played out in later seasons. I think Ricky getting dumber was like a mistake. Like, they make him like comically dumb. Like, he was already pretty fucking dumb, but he had his moments of brilliance. And I think Bubbles being put into the forefront of multiple episodes is also a negative, because he just screams supporting character. Furthermore, Julian gets pushed even more into third banana territory, which I also find is a negative, because this show was originally made with him as the main character. We have to factor in like some positives as well. Like, Leahy's development is great. The overall ramping up of the stakes in the show is great. The increased budget allowing for more chaos is a plus. It is also worth noting that season 4 of the Trailer Park Boys is actually the last season that they shot at a real trailer park. Due to the multitude of noise complaints and the inability to get a trailer park that would let them come back, it was decided to just build like a set that was a trailer park specifically for them to shoot at. Like it or love it though, season 4 of the Trailer Park Boys is that season. It's the one that garnered the most attention besides the 5th one, and it really was like them hitting the peak. But of course, season 4 wasn't the only thing we got in the year 2004 when it came to Trailer Park Boys media. A couple months after the 4th season of Trailer Park Boys concluded, Showcase ran a 45-minute special titled Dear Santa Claus, Go Fuck Yourself. Now on the DVD release and in TV Guide and in promotional materials and whatnot, it was referred to as the Trailer Park Boys Xmas special. The Trailer Park Boys Xmas special is a prequel that takes place during Christmas 1997, about 3 years before the first season takes place and 2 years before the original movie, which, let's be completely honest here, that movie is so far out of continuity that it's basically non-canon at this point. The Xmas special follows Ricky's attempts to win back Lucy after being bailed out from jail, and it also shows Julian at his scummiest. Julian develops a heart throughout the series. Like, in season 1, he's just very, like, he wants to be private, but in the Xmas special, he's a complete fucking asshole, even compared to the pilot movie. His scheme to make money during Christmas is to steal Christmas presents from the mall. If it wasn't for the pet killing operation in the movie, this would probably be the worst thing Julian's ever done. The Xmas special acts as sort of an origin story for a lot of the developments in the show. Like, we get to see J-Rock and Tyrone, who at this point are only known as Jamie and Tyler, being soft-ass preppy kids. And we also kind of dive into the origins of Randy's relationship with Leahy and the earlier indications of Leahy's alcoholism. The Xmas special also has some of the best Ricky and Leahy moments in the show. Like, we have Leahy's drunkenness when him and Barb have a spat, which is like one of John Dunsworth's best drunk performances.
You want to help me win a contest, little elf? Sure.
And then we get the scene where Ricky is like actually so dumb that he thinks God and Santa Claus are the same person.
Huh? The letters. You and Mom got me to write them every year at Christmas. I'm sending one off tomorrow again.
The Santa Claus, Rick?
Yeah, the big guy.
The big guy? The big guy, that's God, Ricky.
Yeah, God. That's what I said, Santa.
Ricky. You know Santa and God aren't the same guy, right?
Dad, you didn't know that? I mean, think about it. How would he get around the world in one night? Of course the same person, right, Bubs?
No, Ricky. Santa and God, that's two different things.
What? Oh, my fuck.
Which is like one of Ricky's best dumb moments in the entire franchise. But I find that the special suffers from the woes of being a prequel. It tries so hard to go into the origin stuff even when it does blatantly disregard shit that was stated in dialogue in the actual show, that it kind of just like, it comes off as kind of groan-worthy at times. And I know, as a comedy show, you shouldn't care about the lore, but the whole thing where Bubbles mentions that Julian's grandma was the one who wrecked up the shipmobile in the series, but then in the special it goes out of its way to show that Ricky is the one who wrecked it up, kind of just throwing continuity out the door. Or another thing that bothers me is how they felt the need to have J-Rock and Tyrone be soft-ass preppy kids and, like, make them turn gangster after smoking weed. Dude, weed, ugh! When in reality, like, I think having J-Rock just be like that with the implication that he was just socialized around a lot of black kids would have been a lot more effective and realistic. The prequel element stuff is hit or miss, but as a TV special, it was pretty funny. Like, I remember we all watched it when it aired. It does capture the spirit of Christmas in a kind of fucked up Trailer Park Boys way. play, and the actors do perform well. This is like a masterclass for John Dunsworth. Like, Leahy does steal the show here, and it would kind of set him even further on the path to being the next breakout character. Also, Ricky fumbling his big chance to win back Lucy because Corey and Trevor fuck up is really funny. Like, the arc welder thing, I don't know why, that's just like really funny to me. The Xmas special is funny, but it's not particularly well written, which kind of sets things up for the future of this show. And I get it. It's a comedy, again. It doesn't need to be super well written. It doesn't need to make sense. But, like, you gotta look at today. Today, we're a society who is so obsessed with lore in any television show. Like, we kind of notice when shit gets fucked around continuity-wise. And, like, a lot of fans are on that shit like a hawk. It's to the point where, yeah, if I see something that blatantly contradicts something, even in a comedy, it does bother me just a little bit. The Trailer Park Boys Christmas special is lumped in with season 4 on a lot of lists, and it is kind of part of the same production order in a sense. It was shot roughly probably just after the main season 4, but it is a standalone type deal. It doesn't really show up in season 4 when you watch it on Netflix, for example. It had its own DVD release, and it was aired about 6 months after season 4 ended. It's kind of like a filler stopgap between season 4 and season 5, which would be released in the spring of 2005. Season 4 and the Christmas special are solid. It shows that the Trailer Park Boys was reaching a level that would be the highest level it could possibly reach, something that it would kind of lose after the 5th season, but we'll get into that later. So what are your thoughts on the Trailer Park Boys 4th season and the Christmas special? Let me know in the comments, and we really only have about 3 seasons of Trailer Park Boys left, and I have basically said that I am planning to do the final season by July of 2027, because that would mark the 20-year anniversary that Trailer Park Boys went off the air. And while I might do something touching on, you know, Say Goodnight to the Bad Guys, or Countdown to Liquor Day, or even the first, like, theatrical movie and don't legalize it, like, I do intend to finish this with season 7. These videos are to document and critique the original showcase run, as well as the effects that it had on pop culture in Canada. I just want to lay that out right now, that my plan is to do every season and maybe the movies from its original run. I'm only saying this because I know I've gotten a lot of new viewers from these videos, and, like, yes, I am grateful that you're watching, but, like, this is stopping at a certain point. But hey, that still leaves us with, like, at least 3 to 4 more videos. So if you like this video, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment, drop me a like, check out some of my other videos, and share me with your friends, and I will see you next time.
Blood doesn't come out, boys. You're not fucking getting in my car.
Here, Ricky, give me the chips. Hold this, Julie. Here. Here.
Oh,
Put
fuck,
that on
bubbles
there.
or salt and vinegar. Ow, what are you doing?
God, boys.
Bandages.
You know what? All you guys do now is complain. We're gonna start calling you little complainy twins. How would you like that?